folks, this is Pastor Mike Hoggard coming to you from Watchman Studios with another Watchman Video Broadcast. We are talking about giants. Great, big, mean, probably hairy, very evil, vicious, cruel, large creatures. Where did they come from? That's specifically what we're looking at, because that's pretty much the controversy. And again, we're going to pick it up where we left it off the last time, but the purpose of this is that I know that there are some Bible believers out there, and I love you. I don't have an axe to grind. This is not about me being right, you being wrong, or vice versa. It's about let God be true and every man a liar. And there isn't any of us that has the whole, we've got it all figured out and we're as smart as God. There's none of us that way. We all see through a glass darkly. But we see through the lens of the Scriptures. And I'm addressing all of those out there who believe what God said. Because there are some people out there who have, and there's criticism on both sides. And of course, we're Christians, which means we're going to fight one another. Don't like it that way, but that's what happens. But there's people out there, criticism on both sides. Those who believe that the giants came from the lineage of Seth and Cain getting together. They criticize those who believe that the sons of God are a breed of angels, a race of angels. They criticize them, saying that they got their doctrine from the book of Enoch or some other non-biblical source, that doctrine is not taught in the Scriptures. The other criticism is from those who believe the sons of God are a race of angels, who say that those who believe that the sons of Seth and the daughters of Cain are the ones mentioned in Genesis 6, that they didn't get their doctrine from the Bible. Now, I've seen both sides. And I've heard the arguments from those who believe that the sons of God are the sons of Seth, the daughters of men are the daughters of Cain. And I can kind of see a little bit of, number one, why they believe what they believe, and number two, why they criticize those who say that the sons of God are a race of angels. I get it, because Jesus said that the angels in heaven neither marry nor are given in marriage, okay? Now, I'm not saying there's a way around that Scripture. What I'm saying is the way to understand if the sons of God are angels is actually from that particular Scripture. But there's something else about that Scripture too, where they're asking Jesus, whose wife is this woman going to be in the resurrection? Because she got married to all these brothers. And Jesus said, you do err not knowing the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, they are as the angels of heaven. Now that idea is going to play into what we're going to see from the Scriptures today. That in the resurrection, we as God's people, who are, according to the New Testament, and we'll look at these verses, the sons of God, that we then are transformed into the nature of angels. And in heaven, they are neither married nor are given in marriage. And so those who criticize the angelic theory, their criticism is that angels don't marry, therefore it's not possible that these sons of God could be angels. So we're going to address that, but we're going to address it from the Scripture. In the last version of this, the only time I mention the book of Enoch is to say we're not mentioning the book of Enoch. And it's going to be the same today. We're only going to use the Bible, and you know me, when I say Bible, I only mean the King James 1611 Bible. That's it. That's our source of our understanding of where these angels or where these giants particularly came from. We left off last week looking at the sort of physiology or the biology of the giants themselves. And that's where we're going to pick it up. But before we get to that, let's understand why it even matters. Does it even matter? Should we even worry about one another's position on where the giants came from? I think it does. I mean, if this is something that happened 4,000 years ago and it has absolutely no relevance, number one, on Bible doctrine, number two, on Bible prophecy, which of course is doctrine. If it has no relevance, then why are we even arguing about it? Why would I even go out of my way to make a teaching on this or to try to convince those who don't believe the sons of God are angels? Why would I even bother if I didn't think it was important and relevant? But I do. I laid the case out last time that doctrinally, the idea that the Israelites, when they were about ready to go to Canaan, and they sent the 12 spies in, 10 of them come back and says, there's giants in there, we're not going in. Evidently, God means to kill us by sending us in there. Joshua and Caleb, of course, rising up saying, what, you guys don't believe what God said? God said that land is ours. He's going to feed us these giants for breakfast. So I believe because Joshua and Caleb had a different spirit in them. Numbers 14 tells us that. And that spirit, I think, means something. That it was a spirit of belief. They believed what God said. And out of over 600 some odd thousand people that marched out of Egypt on the day of the Exodus, 2 went into the promised land. Joshua and Caleb. The other 600 some odd thousand of the Jews died in the wilderness. Why? They continued not in belief. They chose not to believe what God said. You can leave Egypt, never make it to the promised land. And they did. So the idea is that, number one, doctrinally, Paul bases in the book of Hebrews. I believe Paul wrote Hebrews. You may again disagree with that one. But anyway, the book of Hebrews plainly tells us that, in Hebrews 3 and Hebrews 4, that the provocation was all about them not believing what God said in Numbers 13 and 14. And Numbers 13 and 14 was they didn't believe what God said because there were giants in the land, the sons of Anak. All of the people, it seems like all of the people there were of the race of giants. And again, we're not just talking about tall, slender people, skinny, beanpole basketball players. We're talking about massively huge men that were warriors, men that were mighty, men that were kings and literally gods on this earth. So I think it matters doctrinally. Number two, prophetically. Let's look at how this Bible is best understood when it comes to Bible prophecy. Because that's something that I think God showed me early on, was instead of just the book of Daniel or just the book of Revelation being prophetic, it all is. The book of Ecclesiastes chapter 1, where Solomon he's looking at the wind. The wind goes in a circuit. And he said even the water, all the rivers run in the sea, but the sea is not full. The water goes in a circuit. And he said one generation passes, and another generation comes along. He said even humans go in a circuit. The earth goes in a circuit. Everything goes in a circuit. And he's explaining that time does as well. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. Stop right here. And I think Solomon is explaining to us the nature of what it is that we read in the Bible. There is no new thing. That which has been done is the thing that's going to be done. The thing that's already happened, they say history repeats itself. Well, that idea is biblical because time goes in cycles. Everything we measure time with is in a circle, like the sun, the moon, the stars, they circle, and our watch is a circle. It goes around, and you understand that. But what I'm saying is time is cyclical, and it goes in cycles. And the thing that was is the thing that is going to be. Consider the beast. He's already been, according to Revelation 17, he's already been and he's coming out again. So then Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, now these things were our examples, to the intent we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted. Then he says in verse 11, now all these things happen unto them for in samples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. And Paul here is specifically in 1 Corinthians 10 dealing with the issue of the Israelites in the wilderness. And he says, go read their story. Go look at the mistakes they made. Don't make their mistakes. Don't do what they did. They are our examples who are living in these last days of how things are going to happen again. The whole Bible is a book of prophecy. It is the sure word of prophecy. So, what is it about the, it'd be one thing if God just mentions the giants in Genesis 6, and then after that, you don't see anything. Then it would be a matter of, us trying to make some big deal out of some obscure minutia in the Bible. But it's not just Genesis 6. It is the wars that went on in Genesis 14. Abraham dealt with giants. Moses had to kill Og and Sihon, who were both giants. The 31 kings that Joshua slew to get into the promised land. I believe that I would say a majority of those probably were giants. The five kings that went and hid in a cave in Joshua chapter 10, where he's telling the sun to stand still and all that. My personal opinion is they were giants. And I base that upon Numbers 13 and 14, because that was the report of the spies, that all these people in Canaan land were giants. And that's why God was having them killed. They are an abominable race of men. They're not just big. God hates them. Okay? And there's a reason for that biblically, why I believe God hates them. It's because who their fathers were. So again, we're not, and then of course David and his mighty men having to deal with giants. That famous story of 1 Samuel 17 where David kills Goliath. Why is that story so prominent in the Bible? Because I believe that God is teaching us that there's something about that we're going to see yet again. And I want you to think along these lines. If the giants were merely from the sons of Seth, the daughters of Cain, again, there's no genetic explanation for why is it that when believing men marry and mate with non-believing women, that produces giants. There's no genetic explanation for that. But if these giants were the offspring of a race of angels, then I think that must then explain their huge size, both tall and broad. That it would explain why God hates them so much. It would explain why they are an abomination. It would explain, I think, why no giant ever bowed down before the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The giants served Baal and Ashtaroth. They named their city after Ashtaroth. So I think that the reason why God hates them so bad and wants them destroyed out of the land is because of where they came from. And I believe something similar to that could very well happen in the future. Let me explain what I mean. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Notice that we have the four principalities. Principalities are princes, and they are spirits. Powers, spirits, devils. Rulers of the darkness, stars, spirits, evil angels, unclean spirits, familiar spirits, and then spiritual wickedness in high places, wickedness belonging to spirits. The reason why I think those are characterized by the number 4 is I think it's relevant to who the fourth kingdom is all about. It's not the European Union that's going to mingle themselves with the seed of men. It's not some political force field in the world that's going to take over the world and mingle themselves with the seed of men. It is the iron kingdom. Daniel chapter 2, verse 43, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And again, the King James is like the Bible that says it in exactly this way, that fourth kingdom, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places, there's something about them mingled literally with, and see, now we know what this means. We know the seed of men. Seed is the old term for it. The new term is DNA. We now know what seed is and what makes seed work. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It is the code book for what makes our species. We pass our seed along to our offspring. It's our DNA. And I think for the first time now, we have a better understanding than our forefathers did of what Daniel chapter 2 was really all about and what makes that kingdom, that fourth kingdom, so deadly and so dangerous to this world, and why Jesus has to come and destroy the whole thing and bring everything down with it, is because of what it's based on. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, which when we go back to Genesis 6, I think that then is what we're looking at. The sons of God and the daughters of men, and they're joining together, making this hybrid species. So I mentioned we left off the last part of this series looking at the biology of these giants. We're going to kind of back up just a little bit and look at what the Bible is saying about how peculiar. Again, these are not just very tall basketball players. In fact, and I mentioned this last time, some of the tallest living people in the world. I mentioned I personally met Max Palmer, godly man, wonderful. His testimony was fantastic. He came to this church when I was a teenager. He was 7'11" tall. And his story was that he was a professional wrestler. He was in some of these cheap 50s, monster movies, that they made. So he had money, he had women hanging all over him, he had all the alcohol he wanted, and he was so happy with life, he checked himself into a sleazy motel with a bottle of whiskey and a pistol, and he was going to blow his brains out. And his testimony was that when his hand was going to reach over for either the whiskey bottle or the gun, it fell upon that King James Gideon Bible, and for the first time he read that God loved him and he was going to forgive all of his sins. And Max Palmer got down on his knees. He still was as tall as me, and he asked Jesus into his heart, okay? But that guy was not the most athletic person in the world because his size was beyond the normal ratio for humans. He was not in good physical shape. By the time I met him, he had had double knee operation and he could barely walk, all right? Robert Wadlow was 8 feet 11 3/4 inches. So we can say like 9 feet tall, a quarter inch shy being 9 feet tall. But he was no athlete by any stretch of the imagination. He was overgrown. His body mass and his ratio was not normal, and he wasn't this specimen of health. He died at a very young age, and it was due to his size. He was still growing, by the way. But he wasn't this fierce monstrosity of a ruler who could take on any comers, all right? He just wasn't that way, and that's the way it is with a lot of these overly grown people. So we're not just talking about height, we're talking about width. And if you remember Og's bed frame. In fact, let's look at it. Deuteronomy 3:11, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. I think that links him with the Iron Kingdom. Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. If we allow for a cubit to be 18 inches plus or minus, that makes Og's bed frame 13 feet 6 inches tall, but it makes his bed 6 feet wide. I'm 6'3" on a good day. All right? So imagine him not just being more than twice as tall as me, him being as wide as I am tall. So we're talking about this size and this size. A beast is who we're talking about. And that's what David said about Goliath. If you remember Goliath, David said, thy servant killed a lion and a bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine is as a lion and a bear. Well, that's how the book of Revelation describes the beast, as a lion and a bear. All right? And I think the literalness of this, and we're getting into angelology a little bit, but you know that there are beast angels. Ezekiel chapter 1 tells us that the devil is a dragon. He's no man by any stretch of the imagination. He is a serpent. He's a dragon angel, a beast. And I think this Goliath was as much beast as he was man. In fact, Revelation chapter 13, here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man. Beast and man, same time, same way. As much beast as he is man. I think that's who Goliath was. I think that's who the Antichrist is going to be. So I absolutely think this is relevant. Then we look at 1 Samuel 17 concerning Goliath. Remember, Goliath was 6 cubits and a span. That's 9 feet tall. Spearhead, weighed approximately 15 pounds. And check this out. Verse 5. And he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. That's 125-pound chain link armor that he's wearing. He's wearing a coat of armor. They call it mail. And it's like woven braided steel, or in this case, 5,000 shekels of brass. So he's got this brass coat that he's wearing that itself weighs 125 pounds. So he's, what, 9 feet, over 9 feet tall. And his girth, his frame, his muscle mass, his skeletal mass is so hardened that he can walk around with ease wearing a coat that weighs 125 pounds. Again, we're not just talking about somebody that's tall. We're talking about a monster of a man. The reason why all of the fierce men of the armies of Israel stood by and watched this guy for 40 days curse Israel and curse the God of Israel, because they were looking at this guy and they're going, nobody can beat him. If I threw a spear at him, even if it hit his flesh, wouldn't hurt him. Wouldn't hurt him. So nobody wanted to fight him. That's why God raised up David to do that. But anyway, you understand where I'm going with this. The biology of these giants, these are not normally tall people. They're monsters. Numbers chapter 13. This is what the spies reported. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land. If anything, that would be like an understatement of who they were. The people be strong that are in that land, not just tall. And the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. In verse 32, and they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, so we were in their sight. Now, several things about these verses. Number one, they're strong, very strong. Number two, their cities are walled and very great. Not just, and it's not, they're not going, oh, that is great. They're referring to the size of the walls. Huge walls. Walls that when they looked at them, they realized the walls were not built by ordinary manpower. They were built by giants. And there's something peculiar. See, if you're going to accuse me of anything, accuse me of taking the Bible literally. Yeah, I do believe that John saw a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. I don't think they were merely metaphorical or symbolic. They were metaphorical. They were symbolic. The Bible explains the symbolism. But I think they were literal. I think this Antichrist is as much beast as he is a man. And when the Bible says that these 10 spies coming back, and they weren't lying, because Joshua and Caleb, at no time did Joshua and Caleb ever say, these guys are lying to you. They weren't that big. They never said, they never questioned the report that they brought back concerning how big these men were, how big their cities were, and how big their walls were. They never doubted that. The only thing they said was, yeah, I know they're big, but God said we could kill them anyway. That was their only objection to the 10 spies report. So it wasn't what they said about the size of the giants. And what I'm getting at is they used what could be a ratio. And they said it twice. They said, we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So they mentioned it from 2 different perspectives. Number 1, how they saw themselves. Number 2, how the giants saw them. Human to grasshoppers. Now, not going to make a speculation about what exact ratio that is. A grasshopper, are they talking about like a little bitty grasshopper? Are they talking about how long it is or whatever? I'm not going to make any speculation about that. But what I'm going to show you is photographic evidence of the possibility that what these spies saw was actual and factual. That these walls were extremely difficult, if not, I would say impossible, for mere men using donkeys, mules, camels, horses, thousands of slaves, or whatever, to transport huge megalithic stones to build a wall. Number 1, how would you do that? Number 2, why would you do that? When you could build a regular size wall using regular size stones that men could transport, regular size men, and build just as an effective wall. Why use stones that weigh in excess of 60 to 100 tons? Tons, 2,000 pounds, so 100 tons would be, yeah, you get it, okay? Why would they do that? How would they do it, and why would they do that? And here's why I bring this up. This is the city of Baalbek. It is a remnant of a city that existed in Canaan land prior to the Israelites going in. There's a wall around this city. It has 2 different builders. The foundation of the wall has a different builder than the Roman soldiers who came along later and added to it. You can tell the difference. The Roman soldiers, or whoever, added stones that could be carried by a group of men and laid in place by a group of men. Even if it was a large group of men, it was still a group of men. But the foundation stones, number 1, again, how would you do it? Number 2, why? Why would you go to the pain of laying out stones that weigh in excess of 60 to 100 tons, why would you even bother with that? Take a look at them. Cities are walled and very great. These are the foundation stones of Baalbek. Take a look at this one here. This one was in the process of being quarried. Notice the size of the men standing next to this stone. Here is an older photograph of some of the stones in place. You see these foundation stones of this wall. See the man standing at the bottom. In fact, here's a better representation. There's probably close to 60, 70 people standing on top of this stone. This is on record as being the largest quarried stone ever. It's still laying out where whoever worked on it left it in place. It was never used on the wall. So the question is, who quarried this rock? How did they move it? How would they have ever used it, put it in place, and why? When they could have placed smaller stones and been probably just as effective at keeping enemies out. Why would you go to the pain of digging out and quarrying a stone, not even considering the accuracy? You know, there's megaliths like this all over the planet. There are stones and stone walls and remnants that are left behind from some ancient civilization in ancient time that, number one, we don't even have a clue as to how they quarried the stones to begin with. Because the stones, some of these stones, like down in Central South America, I can't remember the exact location, but some of these stones are so multifaceted. In other words, they have so many sides to them, and when they were pieced together, you can't even slip a piece of paper between them. We don't even know how they did it back then, much less why they did it that way back then, much less how they would have even moved a stone like this. So I'm bringing two pieces of information together about, number one, the size of these giants and their ability to build walls that to this day, we don't know how they would have. I'm not even sure that we, with our technology, would be able to match what they did back some 4,000 years ago. So when the report came back that the walls, the cities were walled and very great, and that they were grasshoppers in their sight, they saw us as grasshoppers, we saw ourselves as grasshoppers, our size compared to their size, there's just no way. So that leads us back then to the question of the biology of these giants. If they were so big back then that they were able to manipulate stone in such a way as to put 70, 80 ton stone blocks in place to build a wall, these creatures must have been absolutely horrendously tall. And you know what? I don't have a problem believing it. I don't. I believe what the Bible says, and I think God wanted these giants so big and so mean and so scary. It's just like anything else that we face in life. Yes, we face giants in life. We face things that to us are absolutely impossible to overcome. And it forces us to rely upon God and trusting what God said in His Word, which was at the very core of Numbers 13 and 14 and what the writer of Hebrews was talking about in Hebrews 3 and 4. Let's continue in our belief and trust, even when we face giants that make us look like grasshoppers. Let's continue to believe what God said. God was forcing them, as He does us, to only trust God. And I only trust God. 2 Samuel 21:16, as you know, the giants of Canaan land, over time, we can see them diminishing in size. By the time, Og is, 13 and a half feet tall. Goliath's only 9 feet tall. The brothers of Goliath were a little bit smaller than that, but still, you're talking about guys that are just mean monsters. 2 Samuel 21:16, Ishbi-Benob, which was of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels of brass in weight. That's about half the size of Goliath, he being girded with a new sword thought to have slain David. That's about 7.5 pounds. 2 Samuel 21, verse 18, and it came to pass after this that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai, the Hushathite, slew Saph, which was of the sons of the giant. And there was again a battle in Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan, the son of Jaare-Oregim, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath, the Gittite. We dealt with that last time. The staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet a battle in Gath, and there was a man of great stature that had on every hand, get this, 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he was also born to the giant. So we're looking at genetic deformation, a corruption in the genetics. Again, this is not normal human beings with a tumor on their pituitary gland, which was the case with Robert Wadlow, or some other slightly malformed gene that's causing excessive height in them, causing their bones to grow and stretch them out. We're talking about genetic freaks. Okay? This one brother of Goliath, the son of the giant, 6 fingers, 6 toes. And that brings that number again. Goliath was 6 cubits. 600 shekels of iron. 6 fingers, 6 toes. You're hearing a pattern here. The beast, 600, 6. So I think God is connecting these ideas with who that man of sin is. So that, again, is the idea that the thing that hath been is the thing that shall be, and there is no new thing under the sun. So again, does it matter where these giants came from? I think it does if we're going to correctly identify what this fourth kingdom is all about. Going back to Numbers chapter 13, we're looking at something else that's, I think, related to the giants, not specifically mentioned that they were of the giants. Verse 23, and they came unto the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with 1 cluster of grapes, and they bare it between 2 upon a staff, and they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. Now again, it wasn't a joke that they played where these 2 guys with this humongous beam on their shoulders were carrying this little bitty cluster of grapes. It was obviously so large that it had to be carried by 2 men with a beam on their shoulders. Now, how did the cluster of grapes get that big? I'm not sure. But we're getting this idea. We have 2 witnesses now in Numbers 13 that tell us that the things in Canaan land are bizarre and they're very big. Think of it like this. If they were giants that standing next to a human made the humans look like grasshoppers, what would they need to eat? Whatever it was, it would be a lot of it. They would need a cluster of grapes to be in a ratio, in a proportion, the same ratio to their height. A normal man, a normal cluster of grapes, a giant cluster of grapes. And again, where did it come from? Not sure, but we have a witness to that from Genesis 6, a possible idea. And I can't stamp my foot and say, absolutely, this is what happened. But there was something going on with the genetics of God's creation. God created everything good. If you remember from the book of Genesis, in fact, the last thing that God says in Genesis chapter 1, I just read this the other day, Genesis chapter 1, when God was looking at, and naturally it's going to take me a long time to get there, the very thing he said was, and God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was very good. Everything that God made was the way he wanted it, and it was very good. But then something's going on in Genesis 6 where we have the manipulation of not just humans, but literally everything. Not just the corruption of the genetics of the giants in Numbers 13, but apparently the corruption of the genetics of even the food source of these giants. And does that sound so bizarre that mankind has the ability to monkey around with genes? Because we're doing it now. You know, the food industry in this world is constantly looking for ways for 1 acre of ground to produce way more food than it ever has been. And now that we can successfully manipulate the genetics of virtually any species on this planet by means of CRISPR gene editing, it is entirely feasible. In fact, it's surprised it hasn't happened already. It's entirely probable that science can produce a cluster of grapes that has to be carried by 2 men. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if the news conference came out next year, 2 guys carrying in 1 cluster of grapes. Wouldn't surprise me a bit, because the thing that hath been is the thing that shall be. So Genesis chapter 6, verse 12. God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. So we know that there was something about the sons of God and the daughters of men that corrupted the flesh of men, the genetics of men, creating the giants. Is it possible that whoever was behind corrupting the genetics of men in Genesis 6 also behind corrupting everything with genetics, with genes, with DNA in the time before the flood? And then that same technology being applied to provide the food of the giants. Now again, all of that, it's speculation. This is the clues the Bible's giving us, and I'm trying to extrapolate an idea from it. And you could say, yeah, this is all a bunch of what ifs, but that doesn't leave us with the answer of who the sons of God were. Let's now address that, shall we? Genesis chapter 6, let's read what our King James Bible says. It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Genesis 6, verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So if we don't twist the scriptures, and we don't play around with it, and we just read it for exactly what it says, I think it's very clear that the sons of God marrying the daughters of men are responsible for where the giants came from. I think that much we should say that's how it happened. Now, if you still want to question who the sons of God are, that's fine, but let's not try to twist Genesis 6:4 and make it say something that it's not saying. What it absolutely is saying, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, they bare children to them. That's where the giants came from. So then the question is, who then were the sons of God? You can use a concordance if you want, or you can go to purebiblesearch.com, download this free software, and there's no strings attached to it whatsoever. purebiblesearch.com, Linux, Windows, Mac. It is a way to search only the King James Bible. All right? Pure Bible Search software. It's free download, free of charge forever. So, you type in the phrase sons of God. So here's what you're going to find. We're going to look first at the Old Testament, then the New Testament. And we're going to look at the whole counsel of God, not just isolate one verse that we like and throw out another verse that we don't like. We're going to look at it all to see what God is telling us about who the sons of God really are. In fact, if you wanted to skip over everything I've said all the last time up till now, you can start the video right now, because now we're going to look at who the sons of God are. So we search for the phrase sons of God. We find ourselves, it's mentioned here in Genesis 6, and then not again until the book of Job. Job 1, verse 6, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Satan came also among them. Job 2, 1, again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. So, 2 verses, Job 1 and 2, tell us that there was a meeting of the sons of God who came to present themselves before the Lord. Satan came also among them. All right? I think it's what's interesting is that for some reason, Satan is being separated out from the other sons of God. I'm not sure what's up with that, but I think that then it's obvious in these 2 places that the sons of God are definitely of the species or race of angels. They are the heavenly host gathering themselves together before the Lord to present themselves to God. Satan shows up. Oh, did you guys call a meeting? Well, I wasn't invited, but here I am. All right? So, can we assume Job 1 and 2 is referring to angels? I think we can, unless you have another reason why they are not angels. If we stay just in the book of Job, we're not done with the phrase sons of God. The sons of God also mentioned Job 38. There, it definitely tells us who they are. In Job 38:4, God's asking Job the question, where were you when I did all these wonderful things? God's showing his power to Job. So he says, Job, where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. So the question is, Job, where were you when I did? And he gives a list of things. And he mentions all this, and in verse 7 he says, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So now, I think from just 3 occurrences in the book of Job where the sons of God are mentioned. Job chapter 1, Job chapter 2, Job chapter 38. And I think it's pretty clear that the sons of God in the book of Job are of the angelic realm. Now, again, I'm not twisting Scripture. I'm not trying to add anything or take anything away from it. I think it seems relatively clear that the sons of God are the stars. Then, of course, okay, what are the stars? Well, that's also what we're going to look at as part of understanding who these sons of God are. The sons of God came, they're singing to God, the morning stars, they're all singing praises to God. You know, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament showeth his handiwork. And I believe that's the heavenly host, praising God and singing songs like they did to announce the birth of Jesus. The host of heaven, the stars of heaven. Are stars angels? Let's look at that one. Numbers 24:17. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star. Notice that's a capital S. So that would refer to Jesus. A star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. 2 Peter 1:19. We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto you do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, until the day dawn, and the day star arise in your hearts. Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. All right, so are stars angels? Well, in these 3 verses, Jesus is the star. Not just a star, he is the star. He is the star of Jacob. He is the day star. He is the bright and morning star. It's not Lucifer, it's Jesus, all right? And is Jesus ever characterized as an angel? Yes, King James Bible, because Moses told Israel that God was going to send his angel, and the translators capitalize that as A, capital A, angel. The angel is going to lead them into the promised land. Jesus, I believe, is the angel of the Lord seen throughout the Old Testament. Now, he's not an ordinary created angel. He is the chief. He's like the high priest of heaven, the number 1 chief of all angels. Just like Jesus holds all the other offices. He's the chief bishop. He's the chief shepherd. He is the chief apostle, the chief prophet. Every office that can be held by a man or an angel in the Bible, the chief of that office is always Jesus. So, Jesus then, in 3 verses in the Bible, is characterized as a star. And I think that's particularly the sun. We know he's the sun of righteousness. We know he is the sun and the shield of the earth. He is the light of the world. We know his face shines as the sun. So I think Jesus is the sun, the morning star, the bright star. All right? But then, what about other angels? Evil angels. Are they referred to as stars? Amos chapter 5, verse 26, but ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Chiun, your images, the star of your God, which you made to yourselves. Acts 7:43 quotes that verse, changes it a little, but it says, yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your God, Remphan. And then Revelation 9, check this verse out. The 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. Notice that it calls this star a him. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So in Amos 5, Acts chapter 7, a God is a star. Revelation 9, a star falls from heaven. Okay, that happens all the time. But this particular star is different. This particular star is called him, and this particular star does something. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit, and this star took the key, stuck it in the lock, turned the key, opened the pit of hell, or the gate of hell, literally, opened that up. This is not just a rock or a meteorite falling down from the sky. This is an evil angel. Now, my personal opinion is I believe it's Lucifer. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? This star falls from heaven. Could be, could not be. We're not going to argue that one. But stars are angels. Revelation 12. There appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And in verse 7, there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. The book of Daniel seems to elaborate on this, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. So I think Revelation 12 is very clear. We have the dragon, his tail grabs 1/3 of the stars, casts them to the ground. Daniel calls them the host of heaven and the stars. And then Revelation 12, 7 through 9 basically tells us that those angels, those stars that the devil cast to the ground, they are angels. So I don't think it could be any more clear. You know, we know the stars are going to be cast down to the earth, right? Revelation chapter 6, what does it tell us? It tells us that the powers of heaven are going to be shaken. The heaven departed as a scroll. Verse 13, the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. So I think the stars falling to the earth are the angels that are cast down to the ground, and we actually see it in Daniel chapter 8. The stars, the host of heaven, the angels. So we go back to Job 38. The morning stars shouted, the sons of God sang. The sons of God, the stars, the angels. They're all different ways of saying the exact same thing. The stars are the host of heaven. and they are the angels. Deuteronomy 4:19, since Daniel mentioned the host of heaven, here's what the Bible says about that. Lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided into all the nations under the whole heaven. Deuteronomy 17:3, and hath gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, either the sun or moon or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded. 2 Kings 23:5, and he put down the idolatrous priest, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem, them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. Look at this. The sun, the moon, the planets, all the host of heaven. Principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. Fourth kingdom here. Okay? But here you've got 1, 2, 3 verses that tell you. See, this is the Bible's way of connecting here a little and there a little. God wants you to read the whole of the scriptures so you can connect these dots. The stars are the sons of God, which are the host of heaven, which are the angels, the gods. Because that's what he said in Deuteronomy 17:3. They served the gods, the sun, the moon, or any of the host of heaven. So far, we've connected sons of God with stars, host of heaven, angels, and gods. Now, you're saying, I'm still not satisfied. I have more verses. Jeremiah 19:13, and the houses of Jerusalem and the houses of the kings of Judah shall be defiled as the place of Tophet, because of all the houses upon whose roofs they have burned incense unto all the host of heaven, and poured out drink offerings unto other gods. Another witness. Host of heaven, stars, sons of God, gods, angels. So now, take a look at this. The sons of God equal the redeemed. This might be where you're sort of thinking that the children of Seth are called the sons of God because the children of Seth are the godly lineage. All right? I understand that. I really do. Okay? But let's look at how the Old Testament portrayed the sons of God. Again, you don't have very many mentions of sons of God in the Old Testament. You have Genesis 6, and you have the book of Job. Now, Hosea 1, and there's another place that says sons of God in a little bit different way, and we're going to see how it all ties it in together. In Hosea chapter 1, and then in the New Testament, the sons of God are characterized not specifically as angels or the host of heaven or the stars, but as God's redeemed people. Okay, and again, you might say, see, that's where I get the children of Seth idea. Okay, I understand it. But again, that doesn't explain the bizarre genetic deformities, the way these giants ended up being portrayed in scriptures and in history. It doesn't answer that question. I think this way does. So let's look at all the places in the New Testament, one Old Testament occurrence, where the sons of God are the saints of God. Starting Hosea chapter 1, verse 10, notice this. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God. Now stop right here. So sons of God and sons of the living God, they're the same. Sons of the living God, and he says the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea. That sounds familiar because there's places in the Old Testament where God swore two things. That the children of Israel would be as the sand of the sea, and then what else? As the stars of heaven for multitude. That's That's what he said. And I think Hosea 1:10 matches with that. So he's calling Israel, his redeemed, his saints, as the sand of the sea, and he's calling them the sons of the living God. Literally, the offspring of God. All right? Then in the New Testament, the sons of God are always, without exception, always the saints of the living God. John chapter 1, verse 12. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. I mean, look at it like this. Angels are created by God. They don't necessarily believe in God or not believe in God. They're just God's creation, and God calls them sons. But to that title, sons of God, is only reserved now for those who believe in the name of the Son of God. I believe. I know you do too, all right? Romans 8:14, for as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. Romans 8:19, for the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. Philippians 2:15, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. You see a connection here. John 1, Romans 8 tells us that we believe in the name of the Son of God. We are the sons of God. Philippians adds another dimension to it. Not only are the sons of God the ones who've been, God doesn't lay any sin to our charge. We're blameless because of the crucifixion of Christ, his resurrection. But then he also says, in a roundabout way, he's saying, you're like the stars of heaven because you're going to shine as lights in the world. And that's what stars do. So you see what I'm getting at here? That even, the Old Testament, the sons of God are stars and they're angels. New Testament, the sons of God are the believing saints who will shine just like the stars do and are formed now as sons of God doesn't match what our form is going to be when we're transformed. 1 John tells us that. 1 John chapter 3, behold what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. We shall be like him. How is it that the Bible has characterized Jesus? Number one, as the light of the world. Number two, as the star of Jacob. The bright and morning star, the day star. Okay? And now are we the sons of God? And I look at it like this. When our children were conceived, it did not appear what they were going to be like, but they were still our children. I could say, as I pointed to my wife, this is my wife, and she is bearing our child. So right now, the designation of sons of God to us as believers is accurate because we have been conceived by our Father. But it doesn't appear yet what we will be like. But when he appears, we're going to appear with him, and then we're going to be transformed. Then we're going to be the way Jesus is. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, but then he tells his disciples, ye are the light of the world. We are going to be like him. And he is the day star, lights that shine in the world. So now we're going to take that and we're going to go to Matthew 22, Mark chapter 12, the two places that those who oppose the angels as sons of God, thus the fathers of the giants. Those who oppose that, who say angels don't ever marry. We're going to look at the scriptures, and we're going to connect what we've seen so far. The sons of God in the Old Testament are the stars and the angels. The sons of God in the New Testament are the believers, the saints. But in the resurrection, in our transformation, what are we turned into? First, Matthew chapter 22, verse 29. Jesus answered and said unto them, You do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry, nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. So number one, in the resurrection, we're going to be elevated up to the position, and I would say the body type of angels. We will have their appearance. We will be shining as lights in the world. We will be in a perfected state. We will be immortals and never die. Then, Mark chapter 12, and Jesus answering said unto them, Do ye not therefore err, because you know not the scriptures, neither the power of God? For when they shall rise from the dead, they neither marry, nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels which are in heaven. So, two things here. Number one, two verses, and they both say that we, who are now titled sons of God, when we are transformed in the resurrection, we will be given the nature and the body and the position of angels. We will be as the angels in heaven. Immortal, perfect, wonderful singers. We will have all the attributes of the angels. We are as the angels. So, and I'm going to leave with this idea here. The question I asked last time was, number one, do the angels have bodies? Number two, do they have DNA? We're going to look at that. I'm going to put it off one more week. But I think so far, and we've examined every place. There's one more verse in the Old Testament we haven't got to yet. But we've examined every place so far, Old Testament and New Testament, where it references sons of God, sons of the living God. And I think the two of them are double witnesses as to what that title means. That title, Old Testament, reserved for angels, New Testament, reserved for saints who become angels, who become stars, lights in the world. There's another verse in the Old Testament that specifically, and I'm going to say word for word, says that the sons of God are gods, not men, not mere mortal men, but gods. I'll show you that next time, and then we'll tie up these ideas, and again, I'm trying to help you understand why we believe what we believe. Because I believe this. I believe these sons of God in Genesis 6 were evil angels. They left their estate in heaven. They're not supposed to marry. They came down here. They did it anyway. They have a body, and I believe they have DNA. I think Bible. I'm going to show you from the Bible where it says it. All right? But I'm trying to help you understand, I think, why this is relevant. The thing that hath been is the thing that shall be. And there is no new thing under the sun. And I don't like being caught off guard. I think some really weird, bad things are going to happen. And I think the only answers that are true are going to come from this book right here and no other source. So at least if you don't agree with one thing I said, half of what I said, or any of what I said, you still understand that so far I've not strayed from the verses of the Bible in understanding that the sons of God are evil angels who did this thing in Genesis chapter 6. So at least, hopefully you'll say, well, I don't agree with them, but I see where they're coming from. Like I'm doing with the other side. I kind of see where they're coming. I don't agree with it, but I see where they're coming from. All right? Anyway, I hope this has been a blessing to you. I hope it helps you. And again, don't take my word for it. You go back to these verses, read whatever you want, but go back to the Word of God to see whether what I said was true or not. All right? We'll try to tie this up next week. All right? You're the reason why I do what I do. And I'm glad to do it for you. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.